Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Into the Wild. This is episode 3 of the podcast, and today we're going to be talking about the illegal wildlife trade. Again, I'm Amrita, a current undergraduate in wildlife fish conservation at UC Davis. And today I have with me Nancy Foley. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, sure. Hi, everyone, and thanks for having me on. Yeah, my name is Nancy Foley, and my career was in conservation law enforcement with the state of California. I worked for California Department of Fish and Wildlife in the law enforcement division, and I had a great career there. Just started as a wildlife officer in San Diego, worked many positions through my career, but I spent most of my time in undercover work dealing with the illegal commercialization of wildlife. I ended up as the chief of the law enforcement division for the state of California,
My God.
and ran that for a little over 8 years. And after my retirement, I started working with some international illegal wildlife trafficking through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the State Department.
Mm-hmm.
And what we were really trying to do there was build a network of conservation law enforcement officers globally that could react as quick as the poachers do. They
Oh,
don't have to pay attention to county, state, or
yeah.
country lines. They just go
Oh,
from
wow.
one
Okay.
country to another, and officers didn't have that ability.
Mm-hmm. So, as we all know, one of the most critical issues in modern conservation biology, not even modern, even historically, is the illegal wildlife trade. I actually did some research. Hundreds and millions of animals are killed and captured and trafficked around the world, and it's actually a multi-billion-dollar industry. And the numbers were like mind-boggling when I think it was IUCN that did the research. And many of these animals are actually critically endangered on the brink of extinction and are even invasive to the countries that they're brought to. So that's just some context. Our first question from me to you is, what for people who don't know, what exactly is the wildlife trade? Is it just dead animals? Is it alive animals? What is poaching? Like a general overview.
Yeah, so poaching in general is any non-regulated hunting, right?
Hmm.
So if there's not a law that allows it, then the animal that's being taken is being poached or taken from the country, the biosphere the biome that it is in. So, uh, but what we're really talking about, like if an angler goes out and they take one fish over the limit, it's
Oh.
probably not considered illegal wildlife trade, right? Because they're taking that and they're taking it home, they're not selling it.
Hmm.
Most people consider illegal wildlife trade to be associated with illegal commercialization.
Okay.
So they're taking that animal for profit.
Okay.
So that's poaching,
Hmm.
and it can be live animals or dead animals or
Oh.
parts of animals.
Oh,
Uh,
yes. Like the rhino horn.
Rhino horn,
Yeah.
elephant ivory,
Hmm.
um, hornbill, which is a bird. It just used the beak.
Oh.
So yeah, it's parts and pieces of animals as well as full animals, dead or alive.
And I'm assuming that some of these animals are even used as pets in some cases.
Yeah, especially in birds.
Oh.
A lot of birds, Central and South America specifically, they have a lot of the minor birds. So the mimetids will be taken for song competitions,
Really?
and then they've trafficked from the U.S. down into Central and South America, as well as native birds being kept in those countries. And it's almost traditional in some of the areas, like Panama. An awful lot of the houses in Panama have native birds as pets in cages. So some of the decrease that we're seeing in wildlife is that traditional, um, whether it's the use of the rhino horn or the status of the elephant
Hmm.
ivory, or just keeping birds in their homes.
So it's like a traditional thing for the people who do it. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, well, Um, yes, for the people
Okay.
that keep birds in their
Yeah, yeah,
homes, that they grew up with birds in their homes,
yeah.
and
Uh-huh.
so that's just something that they do. Uh, so like elephant ivory is it gives status. Like people don't eat elephant ivory, but they do scrimshaw on it. They give it as gifts. They have it in their homes. It gives them status
Oh,
in their culture.
okay.
Uh, Rhino horn's the same thing, although it has medicinal values, or people think it has medicinal values. And so
Yes.
that's why it's trafficked.
Yes, we actually learned about rhino horns in one of my wildlife conservation classes. Actually just keratin. It's the same compound that's in your hair and your nails. So there really isn't medically speaking any medicinal value, which a lot of people don't know. So there you go.
You're right. And these things come up, that they they have a history in ancient medicine,
Hmm.
but they have no standing when people actually do the science behind it.
Oh, interesting.
Kind of like the fingernail, the
Uh-huh.
keratin, there is no real medicinal value in it, but somehow it rises to the top, where people will die, and a lot of people die getting rhino horns, right?
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah,
1,500 wildlife officers or rangers were killed in a period of 10 years trying to protect animals.
that's so
So,
sad.
I mean, that's significant.
That's ridiculous.
Hmm.
My God. I can only imagine. Like you have to deal with, the person who's trying to take the animal, and then there's also the wild animal who doesn't really know what you're doing, and then it gets confused, and then there's like this whole cycle of things that happen. That's really sad, actually. I didn't know that there is a statistic for that. Wow.
Hmm. Yes. Yeah, it's almost a war in some of the African
Yes.
countries.
That's what they taught us in conservation bio. Yeah.
Yeah, it's in some countries it's actually shoot on sight.
Oh.
Um, and I remember one of my very first undercover cases where we went in to buy an illegal mount of a grizzly bear. The person that we went to buy it from was telling us a story about when he was in Africa and about the guns that they used, and showed us pictures of what the guns did to people, not
Oh.
just animals, but they were shooting some of the native people
Oh my
of the
God.
countries.
That's
Yeah,
that's
this
even
was a long time ago, but it was very shocking.
so I'm assuming you caught the guy, like,
Oh yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And the information was actually turned over to the U.S. State Department
Wow.
so that they could do some of the history on it.
Oh my God. I actually had, wow, again, I had no clue
Hmm.
that they just sh kill people to just get access to the animals. Um, that's terrible.
Yeah, it's big business. I mean, it's let's see, it's the fourth largest organized crime globally,
Hmm.
which is only behind drugs, human trafficking, and counterfeiting.
Oh. Oh, counterfeiting's up there too. Oh, did not know that. I see. Um, I think we already covered this, but more in depth. What kinds of animals are captured? Is there like a certain demand for some species more than others? Like you said, people preferred birds.
Anything that has a dollar value on it is trafficked.
Okay.
And that goes from ants and insects, butterflies,
Butterflies. Okay.
to birds, raptors, falcons, mammals. You've got deer here with their antlers that are in velvet. Those are used for medicinal
Mhm.
purposes. You've got bears here that have the bear gallbladder is used. Those are big cases in the US. You've got
Mhm.
fish that are not only used as fish products, but you've got in the Sacramento River right there, you've got the sturgeon. The
Yeah. Oh
sturgeon are
yeah.
taken for
I used
caviar.
to I used to work with sturgeon. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when the sturgeon were in the Caspian Sea and the
Mhm.
Sea sturgeon populations collapsed, then they had to go somewhere else to try and find sturgeon roe. So they came to the US.
Yes.
They were doing a lot of sturgeon poaching. They had full rings set up. They had people that would fish for the sturgeon. They had people that would drive the levees and pick the sturgeon up once they were caught.
Hmm.
Then they'd take them to a processing house where they would process the sturgeon roe into caviar, and then they would ship that caviar and drive it. We actually followed it from Sacramento the whole way up to the state of Washington where they were selling it. And
Wow.
it's also been shipped internationally with the paddlefish in the Mississippi River. So
So
yeah, it's
is there a certain
crazy.
way that consumers can know whether the product they're buying, like, you know how I think for salmon, the government issues out some certain like stamps, like, oh, this is like processed in a fishery, something like that. Is there a certain way for certain species that we know that it's coming from a non-trafficked organization?
Well, a lot of the animals that are trafficked, um, say the sturgeon and the sturgeon roe, it's generally not going to come in a processed can.
Okay.
You know, it's not going to come with a
Yeah,
label.
a little
It's
sus.
probably not going to go out the front door of the restaurant. It's probably going to go out the back door. So I think that's one way to tell. I mean, it's just not going to look like your normal product. And then if you make yourself aware of, you know, some of these endangered species, then you're definitely going to be more aware when you go into markets
Yes.
about what is legal and what is not.
Hmm.
And that's
Um,
part of a wildlife officer's job too, is to go into the markets and do fish business inspections
okay.
and you know, make sure that all of the paperwork's in order for all of the product that they have. And there's often a lot of product that's being bought out the back door.
I actually had a question about aquatic species regarding sharks. Obviously, shark fishing in the United States is banned, but shark fin soup still remains, or shark fins remain like have a high demand in certain countries. I just wanted to ask, what are the statistics like? Have you ever worked in a case on a shark, or also
Yeah.
for
Uh,
people who don't know, the shark fin, the dorsal fin is what people eat or claim has medicinal value. Actually, the dorsal fin has poison, and I think it's mercury. So, yeah, go ahead.
yeah. So in California, we worked many shark fin cases. I can remember one abalone case. Abalone is a shellfish
Hmm.
that's found off the coast of California. It's
Yeah.
one of the last remaining places that we had sport fishery
Hmm.
in the world, actually. And so we spent a lot of time with abalone because it was heavily trafficked in the state of California. There's no longer a season for abalone in California for a number of reasons. But when we went to we served a number of search warrants in one day on some people that were buying and selling abalone. We went into the one backyard of the one suspect, and it was lined with shark fins, just lined with shark fins. And I can't remember how many there were, but I know there were over 100.
Were they all
And
from the same species or just different?
they were different species. In which we used our lab that you and I were talking about
Hmm.
just a little bit earlier, to do the actual identification of all the fins that were in there. Um, and I will tell you, if you ever go out and you seize a number of shark fins, don't just box them up and put them in a room,
Okay.
because when you come back a couple of days later, you'll know that you should have put it in a freezer because it smells significantly.
Thank you.
But yeah, yeah. But all over the U.S. we have shark fin cases.
Mhm.
Some of my colleagues down in Ecuador and Peru, they're working diligently to try and stop some of the shark finning that's going on.
So it's still a problem that's persistent
It's
today.
still a problem.
Even after like the rise of social media and like awareness, it's still the same or has it gone down?
It's gone underground more.
Oh.
So if I go into a restaurant in, say, just in Chinatown in San Francisco
Mhm.
and ask for shark fin soup, I'm probably not going to get it. But if somebody else goes in that maybe is a regular customer of theirs, goes in and asks for shark fin soup, they may be able to get it.
Oh.
So it's not going to be on the menu, but it's going
Uh,
to be available to some people.
It's like a backdoor thing that nobody really knows
Hmm.
about.
Hmm.
Oh,
Hmm.
I did not know that. So also in terms of capturing these animals, obviously it means a lot, especially if some of these animals are critically endangered or threatened. Um, what exactly do you think this means for wildlife officers if they're in like protecting a more critically endangered animal? Would that entail more risk per se, or how does that differ if the animal is least concerned versus critically endangered?
So I would say that most wildlife agencies will prioritize the species that they work on,
Okay.
and the prioritization will be based on the number of animals that they have left. So
Okay.
critically endangered will get more focus than those that aren't.
Okay.
So you put together the focus, the critically endangered or the endangered priority, along with what's being trafficked.
Hmm.
So you put those two numbers together, and if it's a high number, you're going to be focusing on that.
Okay. Interesting. Um, and my third question was, why do people poach and sell in the first place? There's a variety of reasons. But also, how do we stop the issue at the root?
Yeah, so it's all about public education, really. Public education, outreach about what's being trafficked and the damage it's doing to our environment, the damage it's doing to us, what the outcomes might be. Uh, that's going to help, and it's really not reaching the older generations as much, but we have to reach the really young generations because they are the future. You in college, you are our future, and so we have to really instill in people the value of wildlife. And it doesn't just have to be the education and outreach to the general public, but it also has to be that education and outreach to the court systems.
Oh.
Because currently the court systems, if you have rape, rape, murder, murder, and then you have abalone theft, it's a hard sell
Hmm.
to
Yeah.
get that prosecuted to the fullest extent that it can be.
Hmm.
If you're in Africa and you have famine and uh, all the domestic abuse that you have over there, and you have murder, and then you have somebody that has a rhino horn. It's tough
Hmm.
in the courts. The courts don't take it very seriously.
Hmm.
So we really have to get to the point where the courts take wildlife crime as seriously as they take traditional law enforcement crime.
Okay.
And so it's all about public education outreach to the courts and to the general public.
So the judicial system needs to also prioritize the ecosystem in some ways, which it's not really doing at the moment. Okay.
Right. I mean, certain counties can, like Sonoma County, when the abalone population was well and they had a lot of tourists coming in to take abalone, their court system was very aggressive with abalone poachers. But then in San Francisco, where most of the abalone was being sold, it was hard to get some of the abalone cases heard in front of the court or in front of a judge. So it's county by county. And that's the same around the world. Right now, we have Indonesia, Thailand, Uganda, South Africa are all prioritizing judicial enforcement of some of the wildlife crime that they have.
Okay.
It's finally we're getting some traction, but we need it even in the United States.
Hmm. Yeah, I was looking at some news articles. I follow a lot of wildlife people and art I read papers and stuff. And I'm from India, and every day I see like a news article, snakes captured, turtles captured, and it makes me happy to see that at least the world is going somewhere. Much better than how it used to be. I remember as a child, I know people who would have like illegal pets. And now obviously because of stricter laws, they don't have illegal pets. So I guess I feel like as a society we've gotten somewhere, but there's still so much work to do.
Right. India, they're doing a lot of work in India. I have a lot of colleagues there, and they're really working a lot with the tigers,
Yeah.
and they're having a lot of success with tigers and the tiger areas. As a matter of fact, they're having so much success that now the tigers are getting outside of the areas where they thought that they would be somewhat contained. And so they're also doing a lot of education and outreach to the communities about what it means to live with tigers.
Hmm.
But they, again, like you said, in India, there's a lot of poaching.
Yeah.
India, Bangladesh are
Elephants.
trafficking hubs,
Hmm.
Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
A lot of animals are coming even from South America. They're being trafficked through Sri Lanka to Bangladesh or India.
Oh, so it's
So
like, okay.
yeah, it's a global motion. We had a big case go from Suriname in South
South
America,
America, yeah.
and it ended up in Togo in
Africa.
Africa. And mhm.
Wow.
So they were trafficking some Lear macaws
Hmm.
and some golden another type of monkey, and
Okay.
they were being trafficked. They got intercepted by a boat off the coast of Togo.
So the Coast Guard did, or their Coast Guard did catch them.
Mm,
That's good.
yeah.
Wow.
But
Um,
this is definitely global. There's no doubt about it. It is a global phenomenon of people that want animals, including insects. Insects, butterflies. We have seen an increase in the number of insects being trafficked. The most recent case was somebody was trafficking ants. They were
ants?
taking ants out of some a country in South America, and they were hiding them in a hollowed out computer case.
That's creative.
Right.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
So insects and because birds are being trafficked so readily right now, and they're being caught,
Mhm.
they're going to trafficking eggs instead of the birds because sometimes the birds make noise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Eggs don't.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. And then the egg will hatch eventually, producing the bird.
Right.
It's not only to mention is it, terrible, but it's also like terrible for the poor animal. I mean, imagine
Oh
being
yeah.
completely translocated from one habitat to some random place on Earth you've never been to with a completely different biodiversity gradient and completely different like life. Actually, I'm a huge follower of the Critter Fixers. And they take in a lot of cases from reptiles. And somebody came in. You can go watch the episode. It's on Disney Plus or YouTube. They got iguanas and they essentially clipped both of the arm, like the digits together like this, to the point where they actually had to amputate off a part of the arm because it was so much pain and essentially just dead skin that I felt so bad. I actually cried watching that episode. Like there were like 12 or 13 of these iguanas. Luckily, mo 12 of them made it, and I think two of them died or something. Yeah. I mean, these poor
Yeah, I
creatures
think
do not have to go through this. Yeah.
right. I think an awful lot of the animals that are trafficked die.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
The obviously the rhinos die when they are dying as they're getting their horns hacked off with a hatchet,
Hmm.
and they're still alive. And yeah, it's brutal. And the
Hmm.
same thing with snakes. The same thing with all animals that are trafficked. Uh, they don't take the best care of them
No.
when they're being trafficked. They don't even know what the best care of these animals
Yeah.
would be. They're in it for the money
Money.
and only the money.
Yeah. And also in conservation bio, we had a whole lecture on poaching and hunting. And I think I also talked about this with Dr. Nagendran. They actually studied how a lot of poaching and illegal wildlife trade, not just wildlife, including like illegal plant trade,
Mhm.
actually funds terrorism
Oh
in
yeah.
some
Yep.
countries.
Yep.
So it's a huge cycle that we're actually, if we can put a plug in one, then potentially we could end more larger world issues. Yeah.
Yeah. There's like I said, well, right now, illegal wildlife trade, and that includes flora and fauna, so fisheries and
Okay.
logging. is worth over $1 trillion
Yeah.
US dollars.
Hmm.
That's a lot of money.
Hmm.
And it's not only worth $1 trillion dollars, but then the countries lose that revenue, right? Because they don't have those species anymore.
Hmm.
So it's multiplied as you go back to that country that doesn't have the income from the species that we're talking about.
Yes. And it's not even about the money part. It's like some of these species that are taken out of their ecosystem are just crucial to the functioning of that biome. Like if I were to remove an animal, you basically mess up the whole food chain and the whole trophic cascade system, which in some ways can actually contribute to climate change. Not to also mention when you introduce a new species, I mean, some people don't take care of their pets properly. In Florida is a great example with the Burmese python. I mean,
Right.
they literally have to go into the Everglades to fish out these like humongous Burmese pythons. And they're just simply invasive and they take over a completely like a niche or like the job of another species. I actually had to write an essay on exotic pets for one of my classes, and I looked into Burmese python papers, and the study was that they consume 400 million mammals per like a certain square footage of area. And I don't remember like the timeline, but 400 million is like enough of, that the poor like alligators and crocodiles should be eating that. So,
Yeah, it definitely affects it. There's no doubt about it. Anytime you introduce something like that,
mhm.
and we've been wrong so many times. I mean, we've introduced species time
Yeah.
and time again,
Hmm.
and we've been wrong because eventually we try and eradicate them.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Like the starlings in New York or camels in Australia, I believe. The
right. Well,
domesticated. Yeah.
striped bass in the Sacramento
Oh
River
yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
eating salmon. Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
That's a
yes,
great
time
example.
and time again.
Yeah. So, I don't know. It's just there's no pros, it's just cons. Um, I can't think of anything that is beneficial from this practice, honestly, and it's just something that's terrible. We also have to understand that these animals have also emotions at to some level which humans just can't understand. I'm not trying to anthropogenize it, but I feel bad. Like imagine like a poor monkey being taken away from its mom. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking to see any of that.
Yeah.
Really, it's heartbreaking. Uh, I
Um,
can't say anything more than that. It's just wrong on so many levels.
yeah. Um, my next question was, do you have any cool stories that you would like to share with us? And what your job as a law enforcement officer entailed? And you said that you were undercover, and I want to hear what that was like.
Yeah. So I was a wildlife officer for 25 years. So yeah, I've got tons of cool stories. You know, any wildlife officer does. I started in San Diego and lobster people that are poaching lobster. Lobster are, everybody knows what a lobster is,
Yeah.
but you have to bring them in fully intact and the carapace length. So the hard shell part between the
Hmm.
horns to the
Yeah.
back of the carapace has to be 3¼ inches, or it did at the time, and you could only have 7.
Hmm.
Well, I remember one case in particular off of the Ocean Beach Pier where we were going, and Ocean Beach Pier is notorious for people taking lobster outside of the season. And so we made this one contact with these people, and they didn't. They said that we don't have anything. Well, they had been collecting cans as well, and so as we were talking to them, the bag of cans started to flip because the lobster were flipping, and they were flipping cans out. So, that's just it's not like a major case or anything. We did a lot of lobster cases, both commercially and undercover, because they're easy to take and easy to sell.
Hmm.
Um, so a lot of the undercover work that I did with the undercover team was actually surveillance. We did spin teams because we didn't fit. Sometimes the team didn't consist of enough people that would fit the clientele that we were working. And so we did an awful lot of surveillance. Um, so another funny story, I was watching a sailboat off of the Zúñiga jetty, which is down in San Diego,
Mhm.
and I saw them pull up like a commercial lobster trap, which is not what they were supposed to be doing. So I followed them the whole way in. I'm on land, they're on the water. They come in through the San Diego Bay, and so you have to try and see where they're going to be moving in.
Docking.
And
Yeah.
I finally found the right island where they were docking and climbed over the gate to get down the dock. And they were just getting ready to sit down to dinner. Nobody had fishing licenses. They said they didn't have any lobsters, so I boarded the boat. As wildlife officers, we have more inspection authority than regular police
Mhm.
officers.
Mhm.
And that's because the wildlife belongs to the people of the state of California.
Mhm.
So if you take something out of the wild, you're actually stealing it from the people of the state.
Mhm.
So I was able to board the boat and I went down and I opened the pot that was on the stove and it had the lobster in it. The table was set, the candles were lit, and I took their lobster.
They have to.
Because they didn't, they had taken it illegally. They had taken it from a commercial trap. They had taken it without fishing licenses, and they were ready to have it for dinner.
Oh no.
So, so some of the undercover work I did, I was one of the first female officers really to work undercover in
Woo!
wildlife law enforcement for the United States
Awesome.
as a state officer. And so my job was actually pretty easy because whenever I went into a hunting situation or a commercial situation,
Uh-huh.
most of the people never suspected that I was a wildlife officer
Oh, it's just
and
wow.
would
Okay.
would just tell me everything. And so I was on an illegal goose hunt where this person was taking significant overlimits of geese and selling them in local markets. And it was back in the days where you had video and videotape. And so I had a video camera with me and I had it rolling. He didn't know. And he was telling me about um, how he poached, how he got away from the game warden, where he sold everything. He told me his like entire life story of everything that he had ever done wrong. And it was almost to the point where I wanted to tell him, please just stop. You told me enough. Please just stop. Um, but we get into some pretty serious situations too.
Hmm.
Uh, uh, Even in the United States, people have a lot riding on their licensing or the money that they're making off of these wild animals. So um, I remember a situation where I went in as a husband and wife team with another officer, and we were sleeping in this little tiny teardrop trailer at the person's property. And we'd been there for several days in the house. A lot of the people that poach aren't the pillars of society, right? So they do things maybe differently than a lot of other people. So the house was pretty dirty. The plates were pretty dirty when we were eating food with them. I know that, like, after a couple of days, especially since the person that we were riding with was a smoker and I had to sit in the middle because I was the woman, uh, I needed to take a shower and I went to get into the bathroom to start taking a shower. And I looked down and all of the kids were looking under the bathroom door, you know. So I decided not to take a shower that day. But in the middle of the night, the the guides that we were with, and we were illegally bear hunting at the time, and they were selling the bear gallbladders.
Oh,
And oh, that's really big business. So
oh my God.
they broke into the trailer in the middle of the night to see, where we were sleeping. They went through our things to see if we had different names on anything, just to make sure that we weren't wildlife officers. I've been in situations where they've separated us and asked us all kinds of questions to see if our stories matched. before they'd go out and do the illegal deed with us. So yeah, there were a lot of scary times, um, but I had this really strong conviction for conservation
Hmm.
and conservation law enforcement, and it always drove me to try and get the people that were affecting the
Yes.
wildlife and the wild places the most, and that's
Yeah.
the illegal commercialization portion.
So when you say this is gonna sound like a dumb question, when you say you were undercover, did you like ever have to like change the way you looked or anything?
Yeah, sometimes, depending on what we were working and like how many people might be involved in the area. Yeah, so my hair, I've had different color hair. Um, I don't generally wear glasses, but I had different glasses, different clothing styles. Uh, yeah, different, certainly different names, different IDs, different backgrounds. So, yeah.
And when you would go with a partner, you would have to like make sure you're all on the same page, or else, you know.
Yeah, yeah, we did. I worked with plenty of partners, both male and female, but I've had partners that were acted as my father. I've had partners that acted as a husband, a business partner,
Mhm.
and it's always interesting. Always interesting.
Have
Um,
you ever gotten close to
we,
getting caught or?
I think well, two times. One, when those people broke in the middle of the night to
Yeah.
check our things. That was a little hairy because we have guns all the time, right? They're hunting, and so they have guns. Um, so that one was a little hairy, and then we were set to go on another guided hunt for something else, and uh, they called the Department of Fish and Wildlife and talked to a number of people, trying to find out if two people that looked like us and had similar names actually worked for California Fish and Wildlife.
You
And
can do
they actually, well, they had some ins with different people, but they were able to find out we were wildlife officers, and luckily for us, they called us and said, "Hey, we know who you are. You can't do this. You're not coming. That," instead of waiting for us to arrive and doing something much worse.
that. Yeah. Wow. Um, you had mentioned insects. I was curious, have you ever worked on a case with insects or?
I have not, um, because of my connections globally, I was able to find out about the insect case. Um,
Okay.
and then, there's certainly a lot of spiders and let's see, there were some scorpions, but the ants were the first ones that I've really seen that that was different.
Do you know
And then some other country said the same thing.
what kind of species they were? Because I know South America has like rare.
Yeah, I don't. I could find out for you, but I don't know.
Okay. And then regarding, I guess, educationally, or not educationally, but after you were, catching people doing this, what does that look like for them on the law enforcement side?
So most of the time, if you're working in an undercover capacity, you don't go and make the arrest. You have other teams that go in because you don't really want to,
Blow your.
a lot of times you've been living with these people or working with these people. Maybe we had a storefront where we were buying and selling with these people. So you don't want to go and make that arrest. Um, so generally for illegal commercialization cases, they get arrested and get taken in and processed. They get put in jail until their trial, unless they can bail out, just like any other traditional law enforcement case. And then there's a court process where they can plead guilty or not. Although I would say 98 or 99% of the cases that we took to court from the undercover team, the illegal commercialization of wildlife, uh, we were successful in the prosecution. So we've sent some people to prison. We've sent a lot of people to jail for a longer period of time. We've recouped an awful lot of money. Some of the, like for abalone, they've got $40,000 penalty assessments. Some of the bear gallbladders, again, large penalties.
Why are bear gallbladders taken? I actually have never heard until today.
Yeah, so bear gallbladders, that's again another Asian medicinal use. And when the sun bears and a lot of the Asian bears and the bear farms over there, do you know about the bear farms where they kept
No.
bears in tiny cages
Oh my
and
God.
they don't let them move anywhere, and uh they have a line into their bile, so they remove the bile from the bear, and then they sell that. They make powders and they sell that medicinally, and then the bears never get out of that cage. I mean, that's all they do. It's terrible. And so when they started shutting that down in some of the Asian countries, then they started moving to the US because we have a lot of bears.
Hmm.
So we've had not a number, we've had cases where um, they'll, different people will hire guides and go out and get a bear and only take the bear gallbladder. And then when people that were nefarious understood that how valuable the gallbladder were or are, then they'd go out and start killing bears and just taking the gallbladder. And then they'd sell it in Chinatown in San Francisco, Oakland, or LA. At one point, if you could get it from California to, say, China, you could get over $2,000 an ounce for the bear gallbladder.
Wow.
So again, people would start doing different things. They'd start getting pig gallbladders and try and sell pig gallbladders as bear gallbladders.
Oh my
So
God.
then the people that were buying that needed the bear gallbladders would say, okay, we want the right front paw of the bear. So they would know that that was a bear gallbladder, not a pig
Not a
gallbladder.
pig
So
gallbladder.
we'd find a bear out in the woods and it would be minus the gallbladder and a right front paw.
And bears, I'm assuming, are not like they do need, I mean, most mammals need gallbladders, so I mean
Most what?
on the health side, I wonder how that bear is surviving without a gallbladder. I mean,
Oh, they don't survive. I mean, they in the US they shoot the bear and then
oh, even better. Wonderful.
they shoot the bear, they gut it and only take the gallbladder. They don't
God,
take anything else except maybe the paw.
that's terrible. Wow. I actually learned a lot today from you. And I hope people who are watching this also learn and hopefully try to spread awareness from wherever in the world you're watching. I think any continent you're living on, I think this is an issue. Yeah. My next question for you is, what is your advice for people who are conservation biologists or people who are interested in conservation biology, like me, or
Mhm.
anybody watching this?
Yeah, pursue your passion. Don't stop. Just keep going. I mean, it's a job that matters, right?
Yeah.
No matter what part of this that you go into, it's something that matters. Uh, I can't tell you how much this like moves my heart. It just keep pursuing your passion. If you if you see a roadblock ahead of you, figure a way around it,
Hmm.
because this is something that matters to you, your kids, your parents, and
Yes.
the generations that come. So,
Mhm.
yeah, keep going. Keep going. That's the advice I'd give you.
I think also it's important to understand that we're we're all on Earth together, and we are also humans are also animals, technically speaking, and it's important for us to understand that we have a capacity to think and make decisions because we have complex brains, and I think we should use that to our advantage and do something for, the world in general. Also, just, for animals, they can't really talk to us. We don't understand their language or their behaviors. And I think it's important that we as humans need to put ourselves in a position where we're able to help them. And illegal wildlife trade is a huge issue. And not to mention the suffering that they go through. Yeah.
Yeah, that's yeah, you're absolutely right. It's huge. It's impacting uh the diversity around the world.
Yeah.
And
Everglades.
we need everybody to be there. And the other piece of advice that I'd give people is um no one fights this alone.
Hmm.
It's going to take everybody. It's going to take the conservation biologist. It's going to take the veterinarians. It's going to
Hmm.
take the conservation law enforcement. It's going to take traditional law enforcement. It's going to take the judicial system. So when you're out there and when you are in the field, um, don't stovepipe your information. Spread it as far and wide as you can. Share it. It might make the difference somewhere. So
Hmm.
in the conservation law enforcement, we often say no one fights alone.
Hmm.
And so we'd like to include everybody in that. So,
Hmm. Yeah, and also you had mentioned earlier education. So the whole point of this podcast is actually to educate people who don't really know much that conservation biology is a science. And it's tied into climate change, ecosystems, habitats, multitude of things. And the whole point is to educate people. I mean, I come from India where we have issues of wildlife and human conflict, illegal wildlife trade, and a multitude of other issues. And a lot of people don't really know what's going on. They don't understand the complexity of, animal-human interaction. So, I completely agree with you that education, especially educating the younger generations, about this should be mandatory and is very important. Yeah.
mhm. And there's a lot of information out there. If anybody's interested, you could go to like United for Wildlife.
Hmm.
Um, they try and bring an awful lot of NGOs together
Hmm.
to fight this. They don't want everybody to stovepipe the information. And they have a lot of clout with the transportation sector, where a lot of these animals are
Yeah.
trafficked. World Wildlife Fund
Hmm.
has an organization under them called Traffic. It's traffic.org, and that'll tell you all about, how much the value of different wildlife that's being trafficked.
Okay.
And then there are a lot of podcasts out there right now about different animals that are being trafficked and the work of the rangers.
Hmm.
There's also a documentary. It's called The Plant Heist
Oh.
about the Dudleya that was being taken off the coast of California.
Hmm.
And they made a great case on it, in part because some people saw something that they didn't think was right, and they told the local wildlife officer.
Good. Yeah.
And the people that were caught there were also caught in South Africa doing the same thing.
Wow.
So,
Trans International.
yes, yes,
Yes.
it is. It's worth a lot of money.
Yes. Well, I wanted to say thank you so much for coming today. I learned a lot, and I hope our audience does too. And any of the important links or websites that you mentioned, I will put in the bio below. So yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.